This story is inspired by real-life events, contains fictional elements, and is not suitable for viewers under the age of 18.
The first time Andrew realized his wife was lying, it wasn't because of what she said. It was because of what she didn't feel anymore. The silence between them had changed, no longer peaceful, but hollow. And in that hollow space, something else had begun to grow. Chicago, in late October, carried a particular kind of cold, sharp enough to wake you up, but not cruel enough to warn you. Andrew Collins stood by the window of their 23rd floor apartment, watching the city glow beneath him. The skyline stretched endlessly, glass towers reflecting ambition, success, and something else he could never quite define. Behind him, the apartment was quiet, too quiet. Vanessa used to fill spaces like this, with music, laughter, even complaints about trivial things. Now, she moved through rooms like a guest who no longer felt at home. "You're still up." Her voice came from the hallway. Andrew turned slightly. Anna stood there in a silk robe, her hair loosely tied, her phone still in her hand. The screen dimmed as she locked it, but not before he caught the faint flicker of a message notification. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "That's becoming a habit." There was no concern in her tone, just observation. Andrew nodded slowly. "Work's been heavy. That's always your answer." She walked past him toward the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. The distance between them wasn't physical. It was something far more subtle, something neither of them had named yet. "When did you get home?" he asked. "Late. Around 10. Andrew checked the clock on the wall. It was nearly midnight now. 2 hours had passed, and he hadn't even heard her come in. "I didn't hear you." "You were probably working," she replied quickly. Too quickly. Andrew didn't respond. He had learned, over the past few weeks, that pressing too hard only led to arguments that went nowhere. Anna leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone again. Her thumb moved with quiet urgency, a rhythm that felt intentional. "Who is it?" Andrew asked casually. She didn't look up. "Work. At midnight." Now she looked at him. Not angry, not defensive, just mildly annoyed. "Not everyone has the luxury of disconnecting, Andrew." The words landed harder than they should have. "I'm not accusing you of anything," he said carefully. "Good, because there's nothing to accuse." She took a sip of water, then set the glass down with a soft clink. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Andrew studied her, the way she avoided eye contact just a second too long, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her phone never left her hand. It wasn't proof, but it wasn't nothing either. "You've been distant," he said finally. Vanessa sighed, as if the conversation itself was exhausting. "I've been busy." "That's not the same thing." She gave a small, humorless smile. "You wouldn't know the difference." That stung. Andrew felt something shift in his chest. Not anger, not yet, but something heavier. A quiet realization that the ground beneath their marriage was no longer stable. "I'm trying to talk to you," he said. "And I'm answering," she replied. "No, you're deflecting." Now there it was, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "Maybe because every conversation with you turns into an interrogation lately." Andrew took a step back, surprised. "That's not fair, isn't it?" she shot back. "You're always watching me like I've done something wrong. Because something feels wrong." The words hung in the air. Vanessa's expression hardened, just for a second. Then she laughed softly, a sound that felt more like dismissal than amusement. "You're overthinking." "Am I?" "Yes." She picked up her phone again. "Not everything is a problem, Andrew." He wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. But belief required something he no longer had, certainty. And certainty had been slipping away, piece by piece, in moments exactly like this. "Do you still love me?" he asked quietly. The question surprised even him. Vanessa froze for a fraction of a second. Then she turned, meeting his eyes directly. "Of course I do." The answer came too quickly, too clean, like something rehearsed. Andrew nodded, but something inside him didn't. Not anymore. Vanessa walked past him toward the bedroom, her silhouette fading into the dim light. "Don't stay up too late," she said. It sounded like something she used to say when they were still, them. Now it felt like a line from a script neither of them believed in. Andrew remained by the window long after she disappeared. The city below pulsed with life, cars moving, lights shifting, people living entire stories he would never know. And yet, inside his own home, the story he thought he understood was beginning to unravel. Slowly. Silently. And somewhere deep down, he realized something he wasn't ready to admit. This wasn't the beginning of a problem, it was the beginning of the truth. The office smelled like ambition. Glass walls, polished steel, the low hum of conversations that sounded like opportunity disguised as collaboration. Vanessa Collins had always thrived in environments like this, spaces where image mattered as much as results, where a well-timed smile could open doors that talent alone could not. That was where she first noticed Ryan Mercer. He didn't belong to the office yet, not fully. New hires always carried a certain hesitation, a need to prove themselves. But Ryan moved differently, like someone who had already decided he deserved to be there. Confident, relaxed, watching everything. Vanessa first saw him in the conference room during a Monday morning strategy meeting.
He sat across from her, sleeves rolled up, leaning back slightly as if the discussion bored him, but when he spoke, the room shifted. "I think we're targeting the wrong emotional trigger," Ryan said, his voice calm but deliberate. "We're selling convenience when we should be selling identity." Vanessa looked up. Most people in that room tried too hard, Ryan didn't try at all. And somehow, that made him more dangerous. After the meeting, as people filtered out, he approached her. "You're Vanessa, right?" he asked. She turned, offering a polite smile. "That obvious? You were the only one who didn't nod along just to agree." There was a flicker of amusement in his eyes, I noticed. Vanessa hesitated for a moment, just a moment, before replying. "Maybe I just don't like bad ideas." Ryan smirked. "Then we're going to get along just fine." It was harmless, at least, that's what she told herself. The first few conversations stayed within the boundaries of professionalism. Emails turned into quick chats. Quick chats turned into coffee breaks that lasted a little longer than necessary. Ryan had a way of making her feel seen, not as Andrew's wife, not as a name on a project, but as someone whose thoughts mattered. "You're wasting yourself here," Ryan said one afternoon, leaning against her desk. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold statement for someone who just got hired." "I mean it," he continued. "You think bigger than this place allows." She let out a soft laugh. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." The words lingered, because part of her wondered if he was right. At home, Andrew noticed the change before he understood it. It wasn't one thing, it was everything. Vanessa smiled at her phone more often, she dressed differently for work, not drastically, but enough for him to notice. Subtle choices that felt intentional. And then there were the little things. "Who are you texting?" Andrew asked one evening as they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Vanessa didn't look up. "Just work." "Again?" She sighed. "It's called having responsibilities, Andrew." "I have responsibilities too." "Yes, but you don't bring them home like this." That wasn't entirely true, but Andrew didn't argue. Because arguing felt like pushing against something invisible. The first lie was small. So small, it almost didn't count. "I have a late meeting tonight," Vanessa said, grabbing her coat. Andrew glanced at the clock. "At 8? It's a client thing, you know how it is." He nodded slowly. "I can pick you up after." "No," she said quickly. Then softened her tone. "It might run late." "Don't wait up." Andrew watched her leave, the door closing with a quiet click that echoed louder than it should have. He didn't question it. Not yet. The second lie came easier. "I'm grabbing drinks with the team," she texted him. Andrew stared at the message. "Which team?" he almost typed. But he didn't. Instead, he replied, "Okay, be safe." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No answer came. By the third lie, Vanessa no longer felt the hesitation. It wasn't that she had planned this. It was that it had become natural. Ryan wasn't just a co-worker anymore. He was the person she looked for in a room. The one she texted when something interesting happened. The one who made her laugh in a way she hadn't in a long time. "You ever feel like you chose the wrong life?" Ryan asked one evening as they sat across from each other at a dimly lit bar. Vanessa frowned slightly. That's a dangerous question. Honest question. She took a sip of her drink, buying herself time. I think. She began slowly. Sometimes people settle into something that makes sense, instead of something that feels right. Ryan studied her carefully. And which one are you in? Vanessa didn't answer, but the silence said enough. At home, Andrew stood in the kitchen, staring at the dinner he had prepared. It had gone cold. Again. The clock read 10:45. His phone buzzed. Sorry, it's getting late. Don't wait up. He read the message twice. Then a third time. Something about it felt wrong. Not the words. The absence behind them. Andrew set the phone down and leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. He wasn't a paranoid man. He didn't jump to conclusions. But he wasn't blind either. And lately, everything felt like a pattern he couldn't quite piece together. That night, when Vanessa finally came home, she moved quietly, thinking he was asleep. But Andrew was awake. He listened to the soft sound of her heels being set aside, the rustle of fabric, the faint scent of perfume that didn't belong to their home. Vanessa. She froze. You're still up? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Andrew sat up in bed, watching her silhouette in the dark. How was your meeting? A pause. Then, long. One word. Simple. Clean. A lie. Andrew nodded slowly, though she couldn't see it. Yeah, he said. I figured. Vanessa turned away, heading toward the bathroom. Get some sleep, Andrew. The door closed behind her. And in that quiet moment, Andrew felt it clearly for the first time, not suspicion, not doubt, but distance. A widening gap between who they were and who they were becoming. And somewhere in that space, something had already begun. Something neither of them was ready to name. Across the city, Ryan lay in bed, staring at his phone. A message from Vanessa lit up the screen. Tonight felt different. He smiled faintly before typing back. That's because it is. And just like that, the line between harmless and irreversible disappeared. Quietly. Completely. The rain started just after 6. Chicago blurred behind sheets of water, the city lights dissolving into streaks of gold and white against the glass. Inside the apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual, like something waiting to break. Andrew sat at the dining table, untouched dinner in front of him, his phone face down beside his plate. He had replayed it all afternoon. Every late night, every vague answer, every look Vanessa no longer gave him. At some point, unease had turned into something sharper, something that demanded to be spoken aloud. The door unlocked. Vanessa stepped inside, shaking the rain from her coat, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. She didn't notice Andrew at first, or maybe she pretended not to. You're home early, she said, slipping off her shoes. I've been home, Andrew replied. Something in his voice made her pause. She looked up, really looked at him this time. What's wrong? Andrew didn't answer immediately. He studied her face, the subtle tension around her eyes, the way she held her phone just a little tighter than usual. Sit down, he said quietly. Anna frowned. Andrew, I just got. Sit down. The firmness in his tone cut through her excuse. Reluctantly, she walked over and pulled out the chair across from him. The rain tapped harder against the windows. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, are you seeing someone? The question landed between them like a crack in glass. Vanessa blinked. Then she laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of disbelief. Are you serious right now? Andrew didn't move. Answer me. Her expression shifted, annoyance creeping in, defensive but controlled. No, she said flatly. The answer came too fast. Too clean. Then explain it to me, Andrew pressed. The late nights, the constant texting. The way you barely look at me anymore. Vanessa exhaled sharply, leaning back in her chair. Wow, that's not an explanation. No, what this is, she said, gesturing between them, is you jumping to conclusions because you don't know how to handle your own insecurities. Andrew felt something tighten in his chest. This isn't about insecurity. Then what is it about? She shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already decided I'm guilty of something. I'm asking you a question. And I answered it. Silence. Andrew held her gaze. You're lying. The words were quiet,
but they hit harder than anything he had said so far. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. That's a serious accusation. So is betrayal. Her jaw tightened. You don't get to say that, she said, her voice dropping. Not without proof. Andrew leaned forward slightly. I don't need proof to know when something feels wrong. That's not how reality works, she snapped. Feelings aren't facts, Andrew. No, he said, but patterns are. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. This is unbelievable. What is? You, she said. This version of you. Andrew frowned.
What does that mean? It means, she continued, her tone sharpening, that instead of asking yourself why I've been distant, you're jumping straight to accusing me of cheating. I am asking why, he said. That's exactly what I'm doing. No, Vanessa cut in. You're blaming. I'm trying to understand. Then start with yourself. The words hung in the air. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? Vanessa leaned forward now, her eyes locking onto his. You've been absent, Andrew. That's not. Yes, it is, she interrupted. You're always working, always distracted. When was the last time you actually saw me? He opened his mouth, then stopped. Because he didn't have an immediate answer. Vanessa seized the moment. That's what I thought, she said quietly. You come home, you sit in front of your laptop, and you expect everything to just stay the same. That's not fair, Andrew said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Isn't it? She replied. Tell me, when was the last time we had a real conversation before this one? Andrew's mind searched, came up empty. And now suddenly, she continued. Because I'm busy, because I have a life outside of this apartment, you think I'm cheating. I didn't say. You did, she cut him off. You just didn't use the word. Andrew looked at her, something inside him beginning to shift. Not conviction, but confusion. Had he missed something? Had he pushed her away without realizing it? Vanessa leaned back again, her posture relaxing slightly now that she had regained control of the conversation. I'm working hard, Andrew, she said, her voice softer now. I'm trying to build something for myself. And instead of supporting me, you're questioning me. I'm not questioning your work, he said slowly. I'm questioning us. There is no us problem, she replied firmly. There's a you problem. The words landed like a quiet blow. Andrew stared at her. For a moment, the certainty he had felt earlier wavered. Just slightly. Enough. Vanessa saw it. And pressed further. You're overthinking, she said, her tone almost gentle now. You're creating problems that don't exist because you don't know how to deal with the ones that do. Andrew looked down at the table. His reflection stared back at him in the dark surface of his phone screen. Tired. Uncertain. Maybe. He began slowly. Maybe I've been distant. Vanessa didn't respond, but the silence felt like agreement. He exhaled. I need to know we're okay. Vanessa's expression softened, just enough to feel convincing. We are, she said. Another clean answer, another perfectly placed reassurance. Andrew nodded. But something inside him didn't settle. Because even as she spoke, her phone lit up on the table. A message, just a name, Ryan. Vanessa reacted instantly, flipping the phone over before Andrew could fully read it. Too fast. Too instinctive. Andrew's eyes lifted slowly to meet hers. For a fraction of a second, something cracked. Not in her words, but in her timing. What was that? He asked quietly. Vanessa didn't hesitate. Work. The same answer. Again. Andrew held her gaze. Seconds passed. Then he nodded. Right. He leaned back in his chair, the tension in his shoulders easing. Not because he believed her, but because he realized something far more unsettling. He couldn't prove she was lying. And she knew it. Vanessa stood, picking up her phone. I'm going to take a shower, she said. We're not doing this again, okay? It wasn't a question. Andrew watched her walk away, the sound of running water filling the silence she left behind. He sat there for a long time. Long enough for the rain to stop. Long enough for the city to quiet. And in that stillness, one thought kept circling in his mind. Not loud, not dramatic, just persistent. If she wasn't lying, why did it feel like she was? And if she was lying, how far had it already gone?
Behind the bathroom door, Vanessa leaned against the sink, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She looked at her reflection. For a moment, just a moment, something like guilt flickered in her eyes. Then her phone buzzed again. She picked it up. "Ryan, you okay?" Vanessa stared at the message, then typed back, "Yeah, he suspects something." A pause. Then, "But he doesn't know anything." She hit send. And just like that, the lie became something else. Not accidental, not temporary, but chosen. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments. Small, quiet pieces that, on their own, meant nothing, but together, they formed something impossible to ignore. It started with the receipt. Andrew wasn't looking for anything. That was the part he would later remember most clearly, the innocence of the moment.
He had been cleaning out the car on a Sunday morning, the kind of ordinary task that filled empty hours. That's when he found it. A crumpled receipt tucked between the passenger seat and the console. A bar in downtown Chicago. 2 drinks, 2 entrees. Timestamp, 9:42 p.m. Andrew stared at it. Vanessa had told him she had been at a teen dinner that night. He turned the paper over in his hand. No company name. No group order. Just 2. A coincidence, maybe. It could have been. If it had been the only thing. Then came the calendar. Vanessa had always been meticulous with her schedule. Color-coded, organized, predictable. Lately, though, there were gaps. Blocks of time labeled vaguely. Client, meeting, work. No details. No locations. Just enough to explain her absence. Not enough to verify it. Andrew sat at his desk that evening, scrolling through the shared digital calendar, his jaw tightening with every empty space that wasn't really empty. Patterns began to emerge. Late evenings that aligned too neatly. Days when she claimed to be overwhelmed, yet somehow had no specific deliverables attached. It wasn't proof, but it was structure. And structure made the truth easier to find. The messages came next. Not directly, not at first. Andrew hadn't planned to look through her phone. He told himself that. He repeated it like a rule he hadn't yet broken. But rules change when reality does. It happened on a Wednesday night. Vanessa was in the shower. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. Andrew didn't move at first. He stared at the screen from across the room. His heartbeat steady but heavy. Then it buzzed again, and again. Something inside him shifted. Not anger. Not jealousy. Something colder. He stood, walked over, and picked it up. The lock screen displayed a message preview. "Ryan, I can still feel you." Andrew's fingers tightened around the phone. The room felt smaller, quieter, like the air had been pulled out of it. He unlocked the phone. He didn't even remember her passcode consciously, but his hands did. Muscle memory from years of trust. The messages opened like a door he could never close again. Threads of conversations. Days. Weeks. Months. Flirting that turned into intimacy. Intimacy that turned into something far more physical. "Ryan. Last night was worth every risk. Vanessa. You're dangerous. Ryan. And you like it." Photos. Not explicit, but intimate enough. Her smile. Her eyes. A version of her Andrew hadn't seen in a long time. Alive. Present. Wanted. His chest tightened, but no tears came. Not yet. He kept scrolling. Each message another piece. Each piece another confirmation. Until doubt was no longer possible. The water in the bathroom shut off. Andrew locked the phone and placed it back exactly where it had been. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. Not pacing. Not panicking. Just waiting. Vanessa stepped out a few minutes later, towel wrapped around her hair, her expression relaxed. "Hey," she said casually. "You're still." She stopped. Something in the room had changed. Andrew looked up at her. And in that moment, she knew. "What is it?" she asked carefully. Andrew didn't raise his voice, didn't move, didn't blink. "Who is Ryan?" The question cut through the air like glass. Vanessa froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. Then she recovered. "Coworker," she said. "I told you about him." Andrew nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "You did." Silence stretched between them. Vanessa forced a small smile. "Why are you asking like that?" Andrew reached into his pocket and pulled out the receipt. He placed it on the bed between them.
Because you weren't at a team dinner. Her smile faded slightly. That doesn't prove anything. No, Andrew agreed. It doesn't. He stood up, walked past her, picked up her phone, and held it out. But this does.
Vanessa's face went pale. Andrew. Don't, he said quietly, not loud, but final. She stared at the phone in his hand. At the messages she knew he had seen. At the version of herself she could no longer hide. It's not what you think, she said quickly. The words came automatically, instinctively. Andrew let out a hollow laugh. It's exactly what I think. No, listen to me, how long, he asked. His voice cracked slightly this time, not from weakness, from restraint. Vanessa hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything became clear. It didn't mean anything, she said finally, the wrong answer, the worst answer. Andrew closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something inside him had shifted. You lied to me, he said. I didn't want to hurt you. So you chose to betray me instead. Her lips parted, but no words came. Andrew took a step closer. Was it physical? Silence. Vanessa, her eyes filled with something, fear, guilt, maybe both. Yes. The word barely existed, but it was enough. Andrew felt it hit him fully this time. Not as suspicion, not as doubt, but as truth. Raw, heavy, irreversible. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, his breath uneven now. How many times? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. The explosion came suddenly. His voice echoing off the walls, breaking the fragile control he had been holding on to. Vanessa flinched. It wasn't serious, she said quickly. It just happened. Andrew laughed again, but there was no humor in it. It just happened, he repeated, over and over again, with messages, with lies. I was confused, she insisted. I didn't plan this. But you continued it. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Andrew turned back to her, his eyes sharp now, filled with something darker than anger. Clarity. Do you love him? No. Too fast. Too automatic. Another lie. Or maybe just another half-truth. Andrew studied her face. For the first time, he wasn't looking for reassurance. He was looking for truth. And what he saw was worse than anything she could have said. I'm going to ask you one more time, he said quietly. Do you love him? Vanessa's voice trembled slightly. I don't know. That was the real answer. And it broke something in him completely. The room fell silent, heavy, unforgiving. Andrew nodded slowly, absorbing it. Every word. Every lie. Every truth hidden beneath them. Okay, he said. Just one word. But it carried everything. Vanessa took a step toward him. Andrew, please. He held up a hand. Not aggressive. Just enough to stop her. I need you to stop talking. She froze. Just stop. His voice was quieter now, but colder. More controlled. And somehow, that was worse. Andrew walked past her, grabbing his coat. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. I need air. Andrew, we need to talk about this. We will, he said without turning back. But not right now. He paused at the door. For a moment, it seemed like he might say something else. Something final. But he didn't. He just opened the door and left. Vanessa stood alone in the apartment, the silence pressing in around her. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. Ryan. Miss you already. Her chest tightened. For the first time. Not excitement. Not thrill. But something colder. Something closer to consequence. She stared at the message. Then at the door Andrew had just walked through. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet realization began to form. This wasn't something she could control anymore. Outside, the cold air hit Andrew like a shock. He walked without direction, the city lights blurring around him. His mind replayed everything. The messages. The lies. Her voice. I don't know. He stopped at a corner, his breath visible in the night air. For a moment, just a moment, the pain threatened to consume him. But then, something else surfaced. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something steadier. Something dangerous. Understanding. And with it, the beginning of a decision. The apartment felt unfamiliar the next morning, not because anything had changed physically,
everything was exactly where it had always been. The furniture, the faint scent of Vanessa's perfume lingering in the air, the soft hum of the city outside. But something invisible had shifted. And Andrew could feel it in every breath. He hadn't slept. Not really. The night had been a blur of walking, thinking, stopping, replaying. By the time he returned home, the sky had already begun to lighten, painting the edges of Chicago in a pale, indifferent gray. Vanessa was awake. Sitting at the kitchen counter. Waiting. Her eyes were tired, her posture rigid, as if she had rehearsed this moment 100 times and still didn't know how it would unfold. "Andrew," she said softly as he stepped inside.
He didn't respond immediately. He closed the door behind him, set his keys down with deliberate calm, and walked past her into the kitchen. For a moment, they stood in silence again. But this silence was different from before. It wasn't uncertain. It was loaded, measured, final. Andrew poured himself a glass of water, his movements slow, controlled. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, almost too steady. "We're going to talk." Vanessa nodded quickly. "Yes, but you're going to listen first," he added, cutting her off. She stopped. Something in his tone made it clear, this wasn't a conversation she could steer. Not this time. Andrew leaned against the counter, his eyes meeting hers directly. "I'm not here to yell," he said. "I'm not here to punish you." Vanessa swallowed, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the counter. "I'm here because, despite everything," he continued, his voice lowering just slightly, "this marriage meant something to me." The words landed heavier than any accusation. Vanessa's expression flickered, guilt, maybe, or something close to it. Andrew noticed, and for a brief moment, something inside him softened. Just a fraction. "I need to understand something," he said. Was this just physical? Vanessa hesitated. "Just long enough. It wasn't supposed to be more than that," she answered carefully, not a lie, but not the truth either. Andrew nodded slowly, absorbing it. "And now?" She looked at him, searching his face. I don't know," she admitted. There it was again, that uncertainty, that inability, or unwillingness, to choose. Andrew exhaled quietly, looking down for a moment before lifting his gaze back to her. "I'm going to give you one chance." Vanessa's breath caught. "One," he repeated. "Not because you deserve it, but because, I need to know I did everything I could before I walk away." The words were calm. But final. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. "I want that too." Andrew held up a hand. "Don't say what you think I want to hear." Her lips parted, then closed again. "Listen carefully," he continued. "If we're going to try to fix this, it ends. Completely." Vanessa nodded quickly. "Of course, I'm not finished." She fell silent. "No more messages. No more meetings. No more excuses," Andrew said. "You cut him off. Completely. Today." His eyes didn't leave hers. "And if I find out that you've lied again, about anything, this is over. Immediately. No more conversations. No more chances." The weight of his words settled between them. Vanessa felt it. For the first time since everything began, the situation felt real. Consequences weren't abstract anymore. They were right in front of her. "I understand," she said quietly. Andrew studied her, looking for hesitation, for resistance, for anything that would tell him this was already lost. But Vanessa's face was composed, controlled, convincing. "I'll end it," she said. The words came smoothly, almost too smoothly. Andrew wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to. Because believing her meant there was still something left to save, something worth holding on to. "Then do it," he said. "Now." Vanessa blinked. "Now." Yes. The pressure was immediate, unavoidable. Her mind raced for a second, but only a second. Then she reached for her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, typing. Andrew watched every movement, every pause, every breath. Vanessa turned the screen toward him. "Ryan, this can't continue. I'm choosing my marriage. Please don't contact me again." Andrew read the message, then looked up at her. "Send it." She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then pressed send. The message disappeared. Delivered. Silence filled the space between them again. Andrew nodded slowly. Okay. One word. But it carried something fragile. Something that hadn't completely died yet. Hope. For the next few days, things were different. Quieter. Careful. Vanessa came home on time. She left her phone on the table more often. She spoke more. Laughed even. It almost felt like before. Almost. But not quite. Because something underneath it all had changed. Trust, once broken, didn't rebuild itself overnight. It lingered in the smallest moments. In the way Andrew's eyes drifted to her phone when it buzzed. In the way Vanessa hesitated before answering certain questions. In the space between what was said and what wasn't. On Friday evening, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse. "You're going out?" Andrew asked from the doorway. "Just a quick team thing," she replied casually. "Nothing big." Andrew's chest tightened slightly. "Team? Yeah." He nodded slowly. "Okay." No argument. No suspicion voiced. Just acceptance. And somehow, that made it easier. The restaurant was dimly lit, tucked away from the main streets. Private. Quiet. Safe.
Ryan was already there when Vanessa arrived. He smiled the moment he saw her. "I was starting to think you weren't coming." Vanessa slipped into the seat across from him, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. "I told you this was a bad idea," she said under her breath. "And yet, you're here." Ryan leaned back, studying her. "You ended things?" he asked. Vanessa hesitated, then nodded. "I had to." Ryan smiled faintly. "But you didn't want to." It wasn't a question. Vanessa looked away. That was answer enough. "You think he doesn't suspect anything?" Ryan continued. "He suspects," she said quietly. "But he doesn't know everything." Ryan leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. "And you're okay with that?" Vanessa met his eyes. "I don't know what I'm okay with anymore." That was the truth. The only truth she had left. Ryan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You don't have to decide everything right now," he said softly. "You just have to decide what you feel." Vanessa didn't pull her hand away. And in that moment, the line Andrew had drawn that morning, it disappeared. Completely. Back home, Andrew sat alone in the living room. The clock ticked steadily on the wall. 9:15, 9:40, 10:20. His phone remained silent. The familiar unease crept back in. Not as sharp as before, but deeper, more certain. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his mind piecing together something he didn't want to accept. Not yet, but soon, very soon. At the restaurant, Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. "Andrew, when are you coming home?" Ryan noticed. "Problem?" he asked. Vanessa locked the screen, setting the phone down. "No," she said, but her voice didn't match the word. Ryan smiled faintly. "You're already choosing." Vanessa didn't respond, because deep down, she knew he was right. That night, when she finally returned home, Andrew was still awake, sitting in the same spot, waiting. "Hey," she said softly. Andrew looked at her, really looked this time. Not with hope, not with doubt, but with something else entirely, something quieter, colder. "How was the team thing?" he asked. Vanessa held his gaze, and smiled. "It was fine." Another lie. Cleaner than the last. Easier. Andrew nodded slowly. "Good." He stood up, walking past her toward the bedroom. No questions. No confrontation. No emotion. Just silence. Vanessa watched him go, a strange unease settling in her chest, because for the first time, he wasn't trying anymore. And she didn't realize it yet. But that was the moment everything truly changed. Not when he found out. Not when he confronted her. But now, when he stopped believing her, and started understanding her. The change didn't announce itself. It didn't come with anger, or shouting, or broken glass. It came quietly. Like a door closing somewhere deep inside Andrew Collins, soft enough that no one else would notice, but final enough that it would never open the same way again. At first, Vanessa thought things were getting better. Andrew had stopped asking questions, stopped watching her phone, stopped trying to fix things. He no longer lingered in doorways waiting for answers she didn't want to give. No more late-night conversations, no more searching looks, just calm, polite, distant. And for a while, she mistook that distance for acceptance, or worse, for weakness. "You're quiet lately," she said one evening, setting her bag down by the couch. Andrew glanced up from his laptop. Just tired. That's it. He shrugged slightly. Work. The same answer he had given 100 times before. Now, it irritated her. Vanessa crossed her arms, watching him. You don't ask me anything anymore. Andrew met her gaze briefly. About what? There was no edge in his voice, no suspicion.
No curiosity, just neutrality. Vanessa frowned. I don't know, she said. About my day, about work, about anything. Andrew nodded slowly, as if considering it. Did you want me to? The question caught her off guard. What? You said you were busy, he replied calmly. I didn't want to interfere. The words were reasonable, logical, completely in line with everything she had told him before. And yet, something about them felt wrong. Vanessa looked away first. Forget it, she muttered, heading toward the bedroom. Andrew watched her go, his expression unchanged. But inside, everything had already shifted. He had stopped reacting and started observing. Patterns became clearer when emotion was removed. Andrew noticed everything now. Not obsessively, not desperately, but precisely. Vanessa's routines, her tone, the exact moments she chose to lie, and the moments she didn't bother anymore. You don't have to wait up tonight, she said casually one morning, scrolling through her phone, as she sipped her coffee. Andrew nodded. Okay. No follow-up. No question. Vanessa glanced at him, almost expecting more, but there was nothing. That night, she didn't come home until after midnight. When she walked in, Andrew was sitting in the dark living room, the faint glow of the city outlining his silhouette. You're still awake? She asked. Yes. That was all. No accusation, no tension. Vanessa hesitated, something uneasy flickering in her chest. Work ran late, she added, almost automatically. Andrew nodded once. I figured. Again, nothing. No push, no challenge, just quiet acceptance. And somehow, that felt more unsettling than any argument. Across the city, Ryan laughed softly as Vanessa slipped into his apartment, closing the door behind her. You're getting bold, he said, pulling her closer. Vanessa smirked faintly. He stopped asking. That means one of two things. Ryan replied. He trusts you, or he's given up. Vanessa didn't answer, because she wasn't sure which one it was. And for the first time, that uncertainty bothered her. Back home, Andrew sat at his desk, a soft glow from the screen illuminating his face. But he wasn't working. Not really. A folder sat open in front of him, organized, methodical, dates, times, screenshots, receipts. Not just proof of Vanessa's affair, but patterns of behavior, connections, details that extended beyond emotion and into something far more concrete. Ryan Mercer. His position, his projects, his vulnerabilities. Andrew leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. This wasn't about catching them anymore. That part was already done. This was about understanding, and once you understood something, you could control it. Vanessa stood in front of the mirror again days later, adjusting her lipstick. She barely noticed Andrew watching her from the doorway. You're going out again? He asked. She didn't turn. Yeah. Work thing. A pause. Then, you don't have to explain. Vanessa glanced at him through the mirror. Something in his tone made her pause. You don't care. Andrew met her eyes in the reflection. I trust you to make your own choices. The words sounded like permission, but they weren't. Vanessa smiled faintly. Good. She grabbed her bag and walked past him. Andrew didn't move. Didn't stop her. Didn't even watch her leave, this time. The door closed, and the silence returned. But it no longer felt heavy. It felt clear, focused. Andrew walked back to his desk, opening his laptop again. Another file, another detail, another piece falling into place. He wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way Vanessa expected. The anger had burned through already. What remained was something far more dangerous. Clarity. That night, Vanessa didn't come home at all. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't pretend, and Andrew didn't reach out. He simply noted the time, the absence, the confirmation, another piece. The next morning, when she finally walked through the door, She looked tired, but not guilty. Not anymore. Hey, she said casually. Andrew looked up from his coffee. Morning. That's it, she asked, a hint of irritation slipping through. What else should there be? Vanessa stared at him, something sharp flickering in her expression. You're not even going to ask where I was. Andrew took a slow sip of his coffee, then set the cup down carefully. No, he said. The simplicity of the answer unsettled her more than anything else could have. Why not? Andrew met her eyes, and for the first time, there was something in his gaze she didn't recognize. Something distant, controlled, final. Because, he said quietly, I already know. The words landed softly, but they echoed. Vanessa's breath caught slightly.
What does that mean?
Andrew held her gaze for a moment longer, then looked away, picking up his cup again. It means, he said calmly, you don't have to lie anymore. Silence. Thick, unforgiving. Vanessa felt something twist in her chest, not guilt, not quite, but something close to losing control. You're being dramatic, she said, trying to regain footing. Andrew didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just let the words fall. And that was when Vanessa realized something she hadn't expected. He wasn't playing her game anymore, and she had no idea what game he was playing instead. Later that day, Andrew stood by the window again, the city stretching endlessly before him. But this time, he wasn't searching for answers, he already had them. Now, he was deciding what to do with them. And as the reflection of the skyline stared back at him, one thought settled clearly in his mind. She wanted something. Freedom, excitement, a different life. Andrew exhaled slowly, then nodded to himself. Okay, he murmured. His voice was calm, certain, resolved. I'll give it to her. And in that quiet decision, the balance of power shifted completely. By the time Andrew decided to act, he no longer felt like a husband trying to save his marriage. He felt like an architect again. Careful, precise, detached. Every detail mattered. Every angle had to be considered. Because this wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about timing. The opportunity came quietly. Vanessa mentioned it in passing one evening, her tone casual, almost dismissive. There's a company event this Friday, she said, scrolling through her phone. Big clients. Senior leadership, the usual. Andrew didn't look up immediately. Important. Of course, she replied. It's basically a showcase, promotions, partnerships. Visibility. Visibility. The word lingered. Andrew nodded slowly. Sounds like it matters. Vanessa smirked faintly. It does. For people who are actually moving forward. A subtle jab. Once, it would have landed. Now it simply confirmed what he already knew. Then I'll come, Andrew said. That made her pause. You, she asked, glancing up. Yes. It's not really your scene. I'm your husband, he replied calmly. I should be there. Vanessa studied him for a moment, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. Then she shrugged. Suit yourself. She didn't see it, didn't feel it, didn't understand what she had just allowed. The days leading up to Friday were quiet. Too quiet. Vanessa continued her routine. Late nights, vague explanations, growing boldness. Ryan, emboldened by her lack of consequences, had become careless. More messages, more meetings, more risk. And Andrew, he watched, collected, prepared. By Thursday night, everything was ready. Files organized, messages archived, timelines reconstructed with surgical precision. Not just an affair, a pattern, a violation, not only of marriage, but of professional ethics, company policy, reputation. Andrew sat at his desk, reviewing the final details. No anger, no hesitation, just clarity. He wasn't doing this out of revenge. He was doing this because the truth, once fully understood, demanded to be revealed. And because Vanessa had made her choice, repeatedly, deliberately, without remorse. Friday arrived with cold, sharp air and a sky that threatened snow. The venue was exactly what Andrew expected, a high-rise ballroom overlooking the city. Glass walls, soft lighting, conversations wrapped in politeness and ambition. Vanessa moved through the crowd effortlessly, her smile polished, her presence magnetic. She belonged here, or at least, she believed she did. Andrew stood slightly apart, observing. Not as her husband, but as someone seeing her clearly for the first time. Ryan arrived 20 minutes later,
confident, relaxed, unaware.
Until his eyes met Andrew's. Just for a second. Something shifted. Recognition. Then calculation. Ryan looked away first. Everything okay? Vanessa asked, stepping beside Andrew. Perfect, he replied. She studied him briefly, as if trying to read something beneath the surface. But there was nothing there. Nothing she could grasp. Good, she said, forcing a smile. Try to enjoy yourself. Andrew nodded. I will. The presentation began shortly after. Executives took the stage. Numbers, growth, success, applause. Everything moved exactly as expected. Until it didn't. Andrew stepped forward during a transition between speakers, not abruptly, not disruptively, but with enough presence to be noticed. Excuse me, he said, his voice calm but clear. A few heads turned. Then more. Vanessa frowned slightly from across the room. What is he doing? She murmured. Ryan's posture stiffened. Andrew approached the event coordinator, exchanging a few quiet words. A nod. A brief hesitation. Then, permission. The screen behind the stage flickered, changed. Vanessa's breath caught, because she recognized it immediately. Her messages, her words, her conversations, displayed, clear, undeniable. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. Then silence, heavy, unforgiving. Andrew turned, facing the audience, not as a man seeking attention, but as someone presenting a fact. I apologize for the interruption, he said evenly. But I believe transparency matters, especially in environments built on trust and professional integrity. Vanessa's heart pounded. Andrew, stop, she whispered, stepping forward. But it was too late. The timeline appeared next. Dates, meetings, overlaps between client work and private encounters. Ryan's name appeared. Again and again. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Executives exchanged glances. HR representatives stiffened. Because this wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional misconduct. Clear, documented, unavoidable. Ryan moved first. Of course he did. He stepped back, creating distance. Not just physically, but socially. Look, he said quickly to the nearest executive, his voice low but urgent. I had no idea she was married. A lie. A weak one. But enough to create separation. Vanessa turned toward him, disbelief flashing across her face. Ryan. He didn't look at her. Didn't defend her. Didn't even acknowledge her. Because his instinct was simple. Survival. Andrew watched it all unfold. Not with satisfaction. Not exactly. But with something close to resolution. Vanessa stood frozen, the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on her. Her carefully constructed image. Cracking. Breaking. Collapsing. This isn't what it looks like, she said, her voice trembling. But even she didn't believe that anymore. Andrew stepped closer, his presence calm, controlled. It's exactly what it looks like, he said quietly. Not for the room. For her. Only her. You wanted something different, he continued. Something more exciting. More. Aligned with who you think you are. Vanessa's eyes filled with something she couldn't name. Fear. Regret. Or the first real understanding of consequence. I gave you a chance, Andrew said. You made your choice. The words were soft. But final. Security approached. Not aggressively, but firmly. A quiet request. A necessary removal. Vanessa didn't resist. She couldn't. Not anymore. Ryan had already disappeared into the crowd. Gone. Just like that. Outside, the cold air hit harder than before. Vanessa stood on the sidewalk, her breath uneven, her mind racing. Andrew, please, she began. But he didn't stop. Didn't turn. Didn't even slow down. Because, for the first time, he wasn't reacting to her. He was done. Behind him, the city lights stretched endlessly. Cold. Distant. Unforgiving. And yet, for the first time in a long time, Andrew felt something unexpected. Not anger, not pain, but clarity. And with it, freedom. Vanessa stood alone, the weight of everything crashing down all at once. Her career, her reputation, her illusion of control. Gone. Not because Andrew destroyed it,
but because she had built it on something that was never real to begin with. And somewhere in that silence, the truth finally settled, too late, but completely. The silence after collapse was always the loudest. Vanessa felt it the moment the glass doors of the building closed behind her. Not the physical silence of the street, cars still passed, the city still breathed, but something deeper. A hollow space where certainty used to live. Just hours ago, she had walked into that building believing she was in control. Now, she stood outside it, erased. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages, calls, notifications stacking faster than she could read them.
Colleagues, supervisors, unknown numbers. She didn't open any of them. She already knew what they said. Or worse, what they implied. Vanessa tightened her grip on her coat, her fingers trembling despite the cold. She looked down at her screen. One name, Ryan. For a brief moment, something desperate flickered inside her. She answered, "Ryan, I can't talk." His voice cut in immediately, low, tense, distant. Vanessa froze. "What do you mean you can't? This is serious, Vanessa," he said sharply. "Do you understand what just happened in there?" Her chest tightened. "Yes, no," he interrupted. "You don't." The shift in his tone was unmistakable. Gone was the charm, the warmth, the illusion. "This could affect my position, my future," he continued. "I need to handle this carefully." Vanessa swallowed. "Carefully," she repeated, her voice shaking. "You were part of this too." A pause. "Then, I didn't know the full situation. The lie was immediate, effortless, and devastating." Vanessa's breath caught. "Don't do that," she whispered. "Don't pretend you didn't know." Another pause, longer this time. When Ryan spoke again, his voice had cooled completely. "This is not the time to argue," he said. "I need distance from this. From you." The words hit harder than anything Andrew had said, because Andrew had been honest. Ryan wasn't even trying. "Distance?" Vanessa echoed. "Yes." Her throat tightened. "You said, I said a lot of things," he cut her off. "That doesn't mean they apply now." Silence. Heavy. Crushing. "Ryan." Her voice broke slightly. "You can't just walk away." "I'm not walking away," he replied flatly. "I'm protecting myself." And there it was. The truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Final. The line went dead. Vanessa stared at her phone, the screen dimming slowly in her hand. For the first time, there was no one left to call. The following days unfolded like a slow unraveling. The company placed her on immediate leave. An internal investigation began. Colleagues who once greeted her with admiration now avoided eye contact, or worse, whispered when she passed. Her email access was revoked. Her projects reassigned. Her name quietly removed. From everything. At home, the silence was different. Colder. Emptier. Andrew's presence lingered in traces, the books he had left behind, the scent of his cologne faintly embedded in the fabric of the couch. But he wasn't there. Not anymore. His absence wasn't loud. It was deliberate. Final. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, neatly arranged. Precise. Just like him. Vanessa sat at the kitchen counter, staring at them for a long time. There were no dramatic words. No accusations. Just facts. Dates. Signatures. An ending, written with the same calm clarity Andrew had shown that night. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Every line felt like a mirror, reflecting choices she could no longer undo. She signed them, not because she wanted to, but because she understood something now that she hadn't before. There was nothing left to fight for. Weeks later, Vanessa stood outside a smaller office building on the outskirts of the city. A temporary job, a fraction of what she once had, a fraction of who she once believed she was. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, not because she had changed physically, but because something inside her had finally broken through the surface, understanding, real, undeniable understanding. She thought about Andrew often, not in the way she used to think about him, reliable, predictable, safe, but in a way that hurt. Because now she saw clearly what she hadn't valued, his patience, his steadiness, his quiet loyalty. She had mistaken those things for weakness, and in doing so, she had lost the only person who had ever truly chosen her. One evening, unable to ignore it any longer,
Vanessa dialed his number. It rang twice, then, hello. His voice, calm.
Familiar. Unchanged. Her breath caught. Andrew, it's me. A pause. I know. Of course he did. She hesitated. I wanted to talk. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Not emotional. Just distant. There's nothing left to say. Vanessa, he replied. The words weren't cruel. They were worse. They were true. I know, she whispered. I didn't understand before. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, I believe you, Andrew said. The gentleness in his voice made it harder, not easier. I made a mistake, she continued, her voice breaking. I thought I wanted something else, something better. And now? Vanessa closed her eyes. Now I know. I destroyed the only thing that mattered. The words hung in the air, heavy, honest. Too late. Andrew exhaled softly. I gave you a choice, he said. You made it. I know. And I've made mine. There was no anger in his voice, no bitterness, just resolution. Vanessa felt tears slip down her cheeks.
Is there any chance? No. The answer was immediate. Not harsh, not loud, just absolute. And in that moment, she understood, not just that she had lost him, but that she had lost the version of him who would have stayed. After the call ended, Vanessa sat alone in the quiet apartment. No messages, no distractions, no illusions. Just truth. And the weight of it. Across the city, Andrew stood by a different window, a different apartment. Simpler, quieter, but his, completely his. The skyline stretched out before him once again. Familiar, but this time, it didn't feel distant. It felt open. He wasn't the same man who had once stood in a similar place, questioning everything. That man had been uncertain, wounded, waiting. This version of Andrew, he understood. He had faced the truth, endured it, and walked through it. Not untouched, but unbroken. His phone buzzed. A message from a colleague. A new project. A new opportunity. Andrew read it.
Then smiled faintly, not because everything was perfect, but because it was his. His life. His choices. His future. He set the phone down and looked out at the city lights. And for the first time in a long time, there was no weight in his chest, no questions, no doubt, just quiet certainty. Vanessa had wanted something different, something more, and in the end, he had given her exactly that, a life without him. And Andrew, he walked away with something far more valuable, not revenge, not victory, but himself, restored, complete, and finally, free.